Now comes the part of the respiration that we did discuss at the beginning, the cellular respiration. That gas has been taken in, inhaled, exhaled, transported to the body cells by hemoglobin, pellet and RBC. Right? That you have studied in the circulatory system, that the RBC, hemoglobin, pellet and the RBC carries the oxygen from the alveoli to the body cells. Right? There it gives away the oxygen loaded on it. Like a piggyback. The piggyback, you know, when a father picks his child and keeps it on the back, or you visiting somewhere, carry a bag, handbag hanging at the back. What happens when you reach your destination? You just take out the bag and keep it aside. The same thing hemoglobin does. That it binds with oxygen, moves around, and wherever needed, it gives away its oxygen and continues its journey in the blood. Now, when it comes to the cellular respiration, there are three different modes of the cellular respiration that the food taken in. Here we are talking of food in the form of glucose, because glucose is one of the major source of energy in the body. Protein and fats can also yield energy. When we look at fats yield more energy than proteins, and proteins yield more energy than carbohydrates. But fats are most easily oxidized, and therefore they are easy source for energy, which is produced in the form of ATP. That is, ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. Actually, in body there are AMP, ADP and ATP. They are interconvertible. AMP get energy, it forms ADP. When ADP get energy, it forms ATP. When ATP loses energy, it returns to the ADP, and when ADP loses energy, it returns to AMP. And hence, if you remember, if you see that ATP is also called as energy currency, that even when you are sleeping, you are resting. What happens? The cells are respiring. And as they respire, they generate ATP. That remains being stored in the body cells. Therefore, when you wake up, after waking up, you feel more fresh to do work. Why? Because that when you were sleeping and resting, body cells have accumulated the energy in the form of ATP. So when you wake up and start working, the energy required by you is easily available to do the work. But as that stock of ATP start depleting, what happens? You start feeling tired. At one time then reaches when you feel like, no, you are too tired to do the work. You go for the rest again. That's how it goes in. Now, in the cellular respiration, there are two. Energy is being produced in presence of oxygen, and the energy is being produced without oxygen. The one produced is called as aerobic, and one without is called anaerobic. Normally, human body is a complex body with a large number of cells. Hence, to meet the huge energy demand, body rely on the aerobic respiration, which completes in cytoplasm and mitochondria. what happens is, first, glucose is there. It will undergo what we call as glycolysis and produce pyruvic acid. Now, if oxygen is there, then only this pyruvic acid will go into mitochondria and then will produce carbon dioxide and water with 38 ATP, a large number. But these 38 ATP are produced. However, in the whole course of generation of ATP, from glucose to carbon dioxide and water, 2 are being used up. 2 are being used up. So this is the total one. But the net is 36. That from a mole, from one molecule or 1 mole of glucose, we get 36 ATP. Total produced are 38. 2 have been used up. And hence we are left with 36. In anaerobic respiration, which normally does not take place in our body cells, in the muscles, unless when necessary. When necessary means when your body needs more energy than what the aerobic respiration can provide. Just like if you see a person, an athlete running 800 meter, 1 kilometer or more, marathon of some kilometers, then the body cells will need a continuous supply of energy. And that time, what happens is, although aerobic respiration is providing the energy, 36 ATP, but there is a saying, something is better than nothing. Then what happens at that time? Aerobic respiration is going in the cell, and also anaerobic too starts. Aerobic also starts, taking place simultaneously together, such that now 2 ATP are being produced in the anaerobic respiration, that is glucose to pyruvic acid to lactic acid plus 2 ATP. These ATP are used up in the body cells, but what happens is, the ill effect is, this lactic acid will keep on accumulating in the body cells. This lactic acid will keep on body cells accumulating, getting deposited in the body cells. And acids are corrosive. In chemistry, you have learned whether acid is weak or is strong, is corrosive in nature. And it is the presence of this lactic acid in the body cells that leads to the condition we call as oxygen depth. That means a state of what you know as panting. Panting, that means once you have stopped running or doing a heavy work or exercising, you still keep on breathing heavily. That heavily breathing is what we call as panting. And why does panting take place? That as we breathe more, faster, we take in more oxygen. And that oxygen is used up then to oxidize this lactic acid. Because what happens if it remains accumulated? Naturally, within a minute or two, it's not going to get oxidized. What happens? It causes muscular cramps or pains in the muscles. You must have seen, if you are playing a badminton after a long time and you play for half an hour, you may see that this part of your shoulder, it starts paining once you have stopped playing, because these muscles of the arm, they have worked more than they are used to. Lactic acid get accumulated in the cells here. And this pain in the muscle would remain unless it gets hydrolyzed. Lactic acid is removed from the cells. Clear? And that pain is what we call as muscular spasm. Muscular spasms. Now, fermentation is another form of anaerobic respiration, but it is being induced commercially for some use, because preparing of or converting of the milk into the curd or other milk products like cheese, yogurt, etc. They are all the sort of the anaerobic respirations. They take place in the absence of oxygen. In similar fashion, what happens is, in the commercially, both brewery, that is alcohol making, and bakery, bread making industries, they rely on this mechanism of fermentation. Because if you see here, glucose is converted into pyruvic acid. And then this pyruvic acid is acted upon by yeast. You must have heard of the yeast powder you get from the grocery shop. It acts on the pyruvic acid and produces ethanol. Ethanol is the product we use in the alcohol industry. Industry involved with making alcohol, beer, wine, whiskey, etc. And carbon dioxide is being used by the bread. Because what happens if you look at a slice of a bread, you see small holes like this. What are these holes of? They are of the carbon dioxide. What happens that at the night you needed some flour. The size of the flour was this. In the morning, after some 3 or 4 hours, if you see the same, it would have risen to this size. Because the carbon dioxide got trapped in the spaces. As the outside layer would have dried, it didn't allow the carbon dioxide to diffuse out. Now what you did, you cut it and warmed it or baked it. As you baked it, what happens? Alcohol, having the low boiling point, evaporates. Carbon dioxide also diffuses out, leaving these holes inside the bread to make it spongy, to make it soft, etc. So that's how the fermentation, a form of anaerobic respiration, is commercially very important to mankind, particularly for the people who are involved in the bakery or with the brewery industry. Right? Let's proceed with a question that has been asked with respect to this cellular respiration part of respiration. The cell organelle considered as the site of cellular aerobic respiration are, if you remember the cell biology part, you must have learned or recall that mitochondria are the one which are called as the powerhouse of the cell. Why they are called powerhouse of the cell? Because they are the site where energy is being produced in the form of what we call as ATP. Next. The term energy currency is used for AMP, ADP, ATP, and ADP. As I mentioned before, in body cells all the four are present. Adenosine monophosphate, adenosine diphosphate, adenosine triphosphate, and nicotinamide adenine diphosphate. All four are present. But of these, the store of energy is in the form of ATP. Adenosine triphosphate. Because if it is mono, MONO, it becomes this. If it is di, it is ADP. If it is tri, it is ATP. Right. Next. The alcohol produced in fermentation. That means the alcohol that is present in the drinks, hard drinks as you call them. That is alcohol, beer, wine, etc. That alcohol is none but is the ethyl alcohol, which is also called as ethanol. That is the scientific name, and with the formula CH3 CH2OH, or you can write it C2H5OH. Both are same. So the alcohol produced in the process of fermentation is none but is the ethanol, the ethyl alcohol. Next. An athlete suffers from muscular pains or spasm after a period of strenuous exercise. Strenuous means hard, requiring more energy. Because the accumulation of what? Ethanol is the product of fermentation. Pyruvic acid is common in both aerobic and aerobic. Lactic acid is in the anaerobic respiration, carbon dioxide in the muscle cells. Now, the option B is the correct. Sorry. Option C is the correct one. Because lactic acid is the one which get accumulated in the muscle cells and produces the pain. Pyruvic acid is common to both aerobic and anaerobic respiration. And as I mentioned, ethanol is the product of the fermentation. Carbon dioxide, it is not produced during the course of anaerobic respiration taking place in the muscle cells. It's only the lactic acid and ATP, 2-ATP are produced. Because if you look at this cycle, here you see, in this it's only ATP. ATP, lactic acid is produced and ATP is produced. There is no carbon dioxide. Next. A respiration process that lays the foundation of the brewery and bakery industry is. Naturally, we did learn fermentation lays the basis of the bakery and brewery industry. Bakery because of carbon dioxide produced, brewery because of the ethanol produced or ethyl alcohol produced. So the correct option is C. Next. In aerobic respiration, number of carbon dioxide produced on the complete oxidation of glucose is. Number of carbon dioxide. If we look at my reaction says C6H12O6 plus 6O2 and it produces 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus 38 ATP. So how many moles are produced? 6. That means ratio is 1 mole of glucose or 1 molecule of glucose produces 6 mole of carbon dioxide or 6 molecules of carbon dioxide. Hence the correct option is C. Next. In respiration molecule process, a molecule of glucose after completion of glycolysis produces a molecule of pyruvic acid, 2 molecules, 3, 4. Now, in glycolysis, what happens is glycolysis, glyco plus lysis. Glyco means glucose. Lysis means breaking down. That means in breaking down of glucose, number of molecules of pyruvic acid produced is 2. That is, from a mole of the glucose, only 2 moles of pyruvic acid are produced. Next. During emphysema, also called smoker's disease. Now, smoker's disease, in order to see the smoker's disease, if you look at a person's butt, you know, if there is a cigarette like this, the lower part of the cigarette has got this cotton-like structure that we call as butt. Now, once a person has smoked, look at the butt part before and after. If you see after, you will find that initially it was white like a cotton, but after the person has smoked the cigarette and has thrown the butt away, right, you see it is blackish. Why? Because cigarette smoke contains what we call as tar. Tar is just like coal tar that you say. Now what happens is, if someone smokes, though this filter is there, but still some of this tar filters out, goes in with the air into the lungs. And as you know, alveoli are the terminal point of the tubular system, respiratory system, the sac-like structure. Now tar can't go any further. So what happens? This tar would deposit here and will block it, such that now no gaseous exchange will take place. And as the person continues smoking, this tar continues to deposit, and you may realize a large number of the alveoli have been blocked, and person suffers from short breath. That means in the resting time also, he breathes more time than normal. And this is what we call as a smoker's disease or emphysema. So which part of the lung get blocked? Alveoli get blocked, the sac-like structures. Next, the respective gross and net production of ATP and complete oxidation of a mole of glucose in aerobic respiration is. Now if we look at the total number of the ATP produced is 38. It produced and used is 2. So the net is 36, and hence the option C is the correct. The total number of the ATP produced is 38, while 36 is the net production, as 2 have been used up during the course of the process of cellular respiration from a mole of glucose to carbon dioxide and water. Next, which of the following does not involve any production of carbon dioxide on complete or incomplete oxidation of glucose? Complete, naturally, 1 glucose. If this is aerobic, there is 6 CO2 produced. Fermentation, 2 are produced, and hence it is anaerobic, in which lactic acid produced with ATP. There is no production of carbon dioxide, and hence again this option C is the correct option, right? So students, we have discussed a number of these questions, and we'll realize that most of these questions have so far been asked in one way or other, or as they are, as we discussed. And you can still further practice these questions from the various sources that you have an access to. Thanks.